Okay, so we're continuing our discussions on the Angular Material Design 10, the component for the autocomplete. We're going to take a look at another example of the autocomplete. So let's take a look at this first example here. Now, we had previously gone over a simple example at the bottom of this page here. And this particular example extends that with a number of different features. First of all, it does do filtering, and it does highlight the first item in the options panel. So let's take a look at how this thing operates. Okay, so we basically have this input field. We have a form. We have a form field tag, and we also have a input tag inside of that. So the input tag has by default, it shows the pick one. When we click on the input field, a panel comes up, an autocomplete panel, and in that panel there are options, and the options are rendered with this structural directive to show the list of options. And right now the list of options, it's an array of strings, and it shows 1, 2, 3. And the interesting thing here is that the first item is highlighted. So if I hit the enter key, it selects that option value. Okay, so that's the first thing to realize. The second thing to realize is that although the options are 1, 2, and 3 in the options array, if I start typing into the field, there's some filtering going on. So the options array is filtered, and that resulting filtered option is piped into this async pipe, which is rendering and changing the values on my panel. Okay, so that is really what this example is doing. So let's take a look at the code and the example simultaneously. Okay, so the example is pretty much the same. You have this form class. The class and the style of this form says, well, you've got 500 pixels of the form. The mat form field class says fill that mat form field 100%, and so it's filling up the form width. And then you've got this input tag, which is of type text, and now input is typically an HTML5 component, and so there's certain attributes you can set in it, and one thing, and so we have the type as text. We have the placeholder says pick one. Notice it says pick one down here. We have an Arial label, which can confuse you. Why are you setting it? Well, it's because screen readers can do voice and help people who, it's an accessibility option to help blind people, let's say. And then you have this mat input attribute, which says this input is a mat input. And so that directive does something for this input field. Now, what it's doing is it's saying, okay, I'm going to dynamically map the state of the input field to the form control, and I'm going to I also have an input, which is a mat autocomplete into my input, which is defined to be a reference variable called auto. Now, auto is a reference variable denoted by this hash symbol to this panel, which is a markup fragment. It's a template which basically pops up. It's a pop-up of the panel, and so that tag, the mat autocomplete, is the thing that first of all, there's this other directive there that says auto active first option, and the other thing is it says my reference to my auto is defined to be this mat autocomplete, and then the mat option is a mat option which shows an option in the panel, but in this case there's a structural directive there which says let option of filtered options and display it. Okay, and when that item is selected for one of those items in the panel, then that option would be set as the input value. It's bound to the value of the input field. So that's what's happening here. Now notice that we have an options array which has 3 elements in it. It is 1, 2, and 3 string, and that array is filtered using the filter function of the array, and so once that's filtered and you get this subarray, which is the filtered options, then it's piped into this async, because implicitly there's observables that are happening here. So the point is, when I type this value, okay, in the input, in the mat input field, in the reactive forms, there's an observable to that's associated with the value changing in this input field, and it's streaming those characters to an observable, and that's the observable which is going into this filtered options, which is getting piped into this async pipe, which is basically changing the stream of values that are showing up in the panel. So let's take a look at the Typescript object and see if what I'm saying makes any sense. Okay, so first we have a component. We have the file here that says, okay, this is a component on init. We need the component for the annotation. We have a form control that's from Angular Forms, and so in our root component, we have a my control which instantiates a form control. Now we also have an options, which is an array of strings, 1, 2, 3, and we have this filtered options, which is this observable of a string array type. And so on init, what happens is after this object gets instantiated, on init, what happens is the control variable is streaming via this observable the characters that the user is typing. That's getting piped with a start with empty string, which means we want, when the object initializes, we want the field to be empty, and when you start typing, we want to start adding characters to the filtered options correlation, let's say. So basically, this filtered option is an observable, which is an array of type string, and now the question is, where does that string array come from? Well, as the user's typing and the values are changing, it's mapping, after it starts with the empty string, it's mapping the next characters as you're typing to this filter function. So I type TH, let's say, and this filter function is taking, we're passing the value of that string, let's suppose it's TH, and it's doing these operations, and it's returning a string array. And the string array it's returning is an array of all the strings that start with a TH, which might be of length 1, but it doesn't matter. It's doing the filtering. So how does that happen? Well, it takes the value, let's suppose the TH that I typed in, and we'll test this out, and it brings it to lowercase and does a filter value. And then it looks at the options, which are these values, and what it does is it streams each one of those, puts them into lowercase, and it determines whether this filtered value is actually in that option. For example, T might be in 2 and 3, but TH is only in 3. Okay, so notice these two things, and that's why I did the example that I was doing an example of. I was doing is like, here's a T, and here's the filtered options that begin with T. Here's a TH. Here's the an array of strings that's a subset of the options array, which is now being rendered on my panel. Although it's a simple example, it's very powerful using this built-in value changes observable from a control, and also this filtering capability and this async pipe. So the bottom line is this filtered options isn't observable, and it's changing as the user is typing. And since the HTML has this pipe async, as this observable is streaming different arrays, and the array is changing, then the options panel is changing. So this ng for loop that's rendering the list of options is changing as the streamed filtered options are changing. Okay, so let's just and we could look at the CSS. There's not much there. We discussed this before, but let's just quickly go into the example and take a look and see if there's anything interesting here that we can change and look at and see how this thing behaves a little bit. Now we could change the styles, we could change the colors. Maybe we'll start there, but we could change some other things too. Okay, so here we are. Let's try something. So we go here and we notice that the width here is 500, which is okay. The max width is 500. The width is 100%. Let's change the background color. Let's just see if we can make this a little bit more interesting. I don't know why that happened. I don't want to do that. Let's do this. Okay. And okay, so that is the example form. So that's this thing up here, the example form. And now the map form field has this class. And so let's go here and see what we could change here. Let me see if I could change the appearance. I can't do that. Let's try to change the color. Let's see what happens with that. So we can do that. So let's change the background color. Set this at 90%. Okay, so at least we start seeing the boundaries around our map field form, our form and our map form field tags. And now we have this. I'm going to say this, which isn't technically not correct, but we could change that. And now, what else can we change? Let's go over here for a moment. Now notice in here, I did a start with. What happens if I, okay, so we know what our options are. 1 apple, 2 apples, 3 apples. That's our options that we're choosing. Now, okay. Now the other thing I noticed is that here there was an auto activate first option, and that was good because when I click here, that first item is active. I could just hit the enter key, okay, and if I don't want that, I could just remove that. And then I would have to scroll, put my mouse pointer over one of these things. Of course, if I just hit the return key, that wouldn't be good enough. Sometimes you might want to do that because a lot of times things get submitted or chosen by accident, and we want to make sure that you choose the number of apples that you want. It's very important. So, but we'll leave that alone. Okay, so what else? Now, why was this lowercase here? Let's see. Suppose I did P in lowercase, it still works. W in lowercase, it still works. So the lowercase was important because it allows the user to type in lowercase to choose to make it case. Let me see if it's case sensitive here. So I still get, so uppercase or lowercase works because it's typically, it allows the user to choose something, whether it's uppercase or lowercase, it's case insensitive. So that's really important. Let's see what happens when I notice that the filtered value is showing the indexed of. So let's see what happens if I choose apples. Nothing. Okay, so that doesn't work. Maps the value to a filtered value. Filters the value. Value to lowercase. Index. Okay, so it's really looking for the values that you're typing in and streaming, and it's filtering, and it's looking for the index of that filtered value. Okay, so anyway, let's is there anything else we need to? Oh, the thing, yeah. So the other thing we didn't discuss, well, maybe we did discuss it, is to start with, and we did look at that. And so that is. Oh, let me see this. So that just broke my app. So let's just not worry about that. All right. So that's really all I want to discuss here. Let's see. Is there anything else that was of any value here? Oh, this is the thing I was looking for here. Now this provider gets okay. So this is the module, and I'm going off on a tangent here, but let's just see what's in the module here. So the one thing that was in here that I was trying to play around with was this map form field default options, and it used this value appearance, and if I made it outline, it would have outlined the input. Let's go back and change this stuff. Change the appearance of the fields. So in the module, we had to inject that token into the module as a provider and use a certain appearance value, and that's the thing was the default options of all the fields in the app, which I was trying to change with a style. Okay, so let's just wrap this up. So that's really all I wanted to show with this particular demo. To summarize, we looked at the default mat option being selected by default, so you could just hit return. We looked at the capability of filtering using the value changes input built-in observable to filter the values that you're typing against the options values in the array to create a new filtered options observable, which gets piped into an async pipe. So that was the value of this particular example. Sorry, I went off on tangents, but I really like playing around with these things and making sure I understand as much as I can about it.